More than 70 years ago, delegates from all corners of civilization came together in San Francisco. There they forged together the Charter of the United Nations from the fires of World War II. Because World War II had shown us the inhumanity that we could commit upon our brothers and sisters, 60 million people had to die because we couldn't overcome our differences of race, religion, or nationality. Today, we'd like to believe that we're a better class of people, that we've learned from our mistakes, yet we cannot go a month without seeing some act of radical violence. You can call it terrorism, you can call it extremism, you may even emphasize with their cause. What you cannot do is say it is justified. If you've never heard of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, I encourage you to read them. These goals are what we believe humanity can accomplish when we are at our best, united. Unfortunately, a cataclysmic obstacle to these goals are the violent extremists. Because while the United Nations is looking to build a better world together through peace and cooperation, violent extremists would rather take the easy way out. They want to point at someone and say, they're to blame for my lot in life, and if I can get rid of them, then my life and the lives of my children will be better. It's a seductive philosophy, it really is, and we've all done it. My teacher is unfair, Democrats want my hard-earned money, Republicans work for the wealthy, the banks were to blame for the housing crash, Muslims were responsible for 9/11, even those who say we can never be free in the Middle East because Europeans and Americans support our oppressors. These statements all have elements of truth and fallacy. These statements have plurality, and plurality is what drives humankind forward. Yet it is how we deal with this plurality that determines who we are as people. It is okay to disagree with each other. It is the champion of change in our society. But there is a right way and a wrong way to champion that change. What message can a gun bring to a school that a sit-in cannot? What scripture is it written that death and destruction are more permissible than diplomacy and dissenting opinions? What nation today is better off because they chose apartheid and genocide over appreciation and generosity? Violent extremism is unforgivable and unacceptable, but it is not baseless. It comes from enmity, which is anger towards an individual and hatred for that individual's culture. Enmity is the driving force of extremist violence. It's that feeling of frustration and hopelessness you have towards your problems, and it is the rationalization extremists use to justify their actions. Our parents taught us to treat others as we'd like to be treated. They knew that there would be times when others would break this rule, so they taught us a second rule: 2 wrongs don't make a right. The men and women of Selma forced the world to watch as they were beaten with billy clubs and baseball bats by those who would fear change. Compare that to Al-Qaeda, who forced the world to watch as they brought down the World Trade Centers. Who are the real martyrs? Who are the real heroes? Both brought their discourse front and center. One ignited a civil rights movement. One ignited a cultural war. It would be naive to say that violence didn't have a place in human history. It has collapsed empires, toppled tyrants, and converted monarchy into democracy, but it has long outlived its use. Today we can communicate and share ideas like never before. The digital age has empowered social change and accountability previous generations never thought possible. What hasn't changed is that information is the prerequisite to action. We have the information that violent extremism is not a pre-existing condition some are born with. Violent extremism is the byproduct of pain and suffering caused by oppression. We can not only counter the violence, we can prevent it from ever happening. Not through the premeditated murder of extremists, but by holding nations and world leaders accountable for the well-being of their people, by offering alternatives through education, and by empowering not just the men, but the women and children as well. Because you don't win championships by leaving 2/3 of the team on the bench. Hatred and enmity exist here in this world today, and it is growing. I don't know if the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are possible, and I can't tell you how much money it would cost or how long it would take to end violent extremism. What I can tell you is that we owe it to future generations to come together in unity to combat an unjustifiable practice, just as our ancestors did for us one cold afternoon some 70 years ago.